It's true. Black people will be discriminated against in a Latin American country. If you're leaving America to get away from discrimination and you're moving to a Latin American country thinking that you're not going to be discriminated against, you're wrong.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren and I'm Maureen. So today we're going to be looking at a video that tries to explain the racism that exists in Mexico. So how many of you guys know about telenovelas? Or how many of you have seen or encountered telenovela programs? Most of them don't have black people, and this is for a reason, right? So in this video, it's the Mexicans themselves, or should we call them Latino? I can't differentiate, but anyway, moving on, it's they themselves who are trying to explain this phenomena, and we are just here sitting down and talking to you, our black people, fellow black people, and telling you, in case you didn't know and you carried your ignorance and went on a vacation to Mexico, and then you come back with a bag full of racist experiences. This is why you come back with a bag full of racist experiences. Yeah, so as we normally say, before you go to any place, know the history of the place, and don't just others go out of ignorance, right? Because you have a good Latino friend in America or wherever you come from, and you think everybody is that good, and then you carry your ignorance, you go to their country, and then you experience something for the first time, and you feel like, you know, you've been discriminated. You should know the history of that place before you take your dollar there. So let's watch this and then you come back and talk about it.
I've been hearing a lot about people that have moved to Mexico and are complaining that they're being discriminated against in Mexico. Let me tell you something. Mexico discriminates against their own Mexican people that are darker shade than the rest of them. In Mexico, there's a lot of states that have very fair skin and blue eyes people. The people that have indigenous features, the very dark skin, the black hair, are discriminated against. So you coming to live to Mexico and think that you're not going to be discriminated against is a fallacy. This is not just in Mexico. It happens everywhere in Latin America. Black people are discriminated against. In Honduras, there's an entire community of Garifunas. And Garifunas have been in Honduras for hundreds of years. And to this day, they discriminate against them. They remove their land. Some of them even get murdered. It's a battle Garifunas have gone through for decades with Honduras, because Honduras to this day does not recognize Garifunas as part of being part of Honduras. And so I grew up looking at Garifunas as if they were subculture, subhuman. I'm telling you, you think that you're leaving the US and moving to a Latin American country to escape racism. You're not escaping racism. And you need to understand that that's just the way things are. And it's very acceptable. Those of you who are coming on TikTok complaining that they're in Mexico and that they are embracing the Mexican culture, and why are they being discriminated against? That is why. Mexico people discriminate against their own. What do you think it's going to happen when you're there? In fact, in Mexico, if you don't have light skin and blue eyes, first of all, look at the telenovelas. You tell me, what do you see in telenovelas? You're only going to see beautiful people with light skin and blue eyes. You're going to see some indigenous people. The vast majority of the roles they give the indigenous actors is of the maid, is of, you know, it's never the pretty woman. Yeah. How many actors do you know in Mexico that are in a telenovela and they happen to be black? Just look at the telenovelas and you tell me how many indigenous actors and actresses you're going to see in those telenovelas. It's the reality in Mexico, and you need to understand that. You're not escaping racism by moving to a Latin American country.
Black people in Mexico were not even acknowledged until recent years. Their presence was not acknowledged by the government up until very recent years. But yet, they have been there since days of slavery. You understand? So, since the days of slavery, a lot of the slaves in North America, in the United States, a lot of the slaves ran to Mexico to hide. And a lot of them have been living there. And not only that, but a lot of these Spaniards, they brought some slaves to Mexico too. So black people have been in Mexico for hundreds of years. But Mexican government has not acknowledged their presence until very recent years. And that is why I made a video and called it Afro-Mexican. Because these people have been there for many years with their own communities, speaking Spanish of course, but they acknowledge their African ancestry. They acknowledge it. That's why they self-identify as Afro-Mexican, because they're acknowledging their African roots. And the government has not bothered with them. When you watch telenovelas, Spanish telenovelas, have you ever seen a black man? No, never. But yet, black people have been there since the Europeans have been there for hundreds of years.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section. One question I have to ask guys is that, you know, America had its own thing. Black people fought for their rights, started the black movements, Black Lives Matter movements, you know, and right now it's hard to ignore black people in America, right? There are some incidences that happens in Europe, places like France, UK, what, but you still know that there are black people there, right? But do you know there's a child in Africa or even in America who doesn't know that Latin America has black communities, Afro-Latina communities, you know? You know, the first time I ever saw a person as black as me on TV and she claimed to be, was it black from a Latino community, and she was a half caste. No, this one was not a half caste. Really? Do you guys know on Love and Hip Hop, was it Miami? This girl that used to call herself La Negra, right? Love and Hip Hop, she was featured in a Love and Hip Hop franchise, Miami. And she was called La Negra. You know, La Negra was a Latin girl, and that was the first time I ever saw a black, dark, really dark Latin American woman who looked like her. Yeah, and I was really happy, guys, because I was like, to see someone who looks like me. She speaks the Spanish, like she was one of them. The only difference, you guys, was her skin color. But she was such a Latin woman. The way she talks, her aggression, you know, it's like of the Latin community, you know. Right. And she was such a beautiful Latin woman, and I was like, how come we never knew that the Latin community had Afro-Latinas, you know? Because when we see, because us growing up, we grew up watching telenovelas, and the only people we saw on telenovelas were people that looked like Jennifer Lopez. And you'll even be forgiven, Africans, they'd be forgiven for thinking that Latin people are white. Yeah, they're white people with two languages, English and Spanish. Right, it's because they don't see a lot of brown and Afro-Latinas on TV who are coming from Latin American countries, you know. Right, and I'm just asking myself if not only Mexico but most Latin American countries, they have black people. How come black people are not being represented, at least not in a good way, on media? Decades have gone by, you know. And I just wish instead of black people from Latin American communities waiting for them to be represented in media, they could come up with their own representation, the way blacks in America came up with their own representation by people like Taylor Perry building their movie industries and telling their own black stories. You know, I also understand why that is possible, because when you look at the history of Latin American people, I feel like black people there have really been oppressed to such a point point where they can't even be able to rise up right now. But that's not an excuse.
That is not an excuse. Americans were also oppressed, but they were very strong. They keep fighting. They're fighters, you know. So what I'm saying is, in this day and age, now that people are starting to realize, oh, there is black people in the Latin community. This Latin community, they should do their very best to start telling their own Afro-Latina stories. For us in Africa and black people in America to know what they are, how they are as a Latin community, a black Latin community, they should start telling their own stories.
But I feel like it starts with people like La Negra, Amara La Negra. I love that girl just because of her. Like she refused to be silenced, you know. Yeah. And I'm telling myself, I was asking myself, why is it that people like Selena Gomez, people who hold influence, people like Jennifer Lopez, who can't bring these social issues to light? And then I remembered Jennifer Lopez has been accused of being a racist. And she's been accused by some dance community people. She's been accused of being racist to the point where, you know, you're trying to look like you're including everybody, but her dancers, the black ones, are normally away from the center of attraction. The center of attraction being J-Lo, it's normally J-Lo and then white dancers, and then the black ones are there. So you know, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Black people should start telling their own stories. Stop letting the white people, even if you all live in the same community, stop letting them to write your stories. They will never understand your struggles. They will never walk a mile in your shoes because they're white. How can they walk a mile in a black person's shoe? Yeah, but I believe that these are the kind of things that spread awareness, because this guy is called Ricardo. Is it Ricardo? Yeah, guys, this guy is called Ricardo, and I feel like he's doing such an amazing job at educating people, because amongst his followers is a big, huge Latin community who he really educates and creates awareness amongst them. But now you see, he is also a somewhat brownish Latino man. You know, we don't see a lot of the black Latinas. The black people who talk with his accent. Where are they? They're still quiet somewhere. Anyway, let's give them time. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? And then black people from all over the world are going to Mexico to vacation, and then you come back with a bag full of stories saying, oh, they were racist to me. Mexicans don't like black people, this and that. They're not, them themselves, they've said they're not ready to embrace their own Afro-Latinos or their own Mexican community that are brown in color. They only embrace the ones that are white, the ones that are pale. Yeah, so they still have a lot of work to do, and they still have a long way to go. And for the black people who go into Mexico without knowing this, then now you know. It's a rude awakening, right? Right. Just go mentally prepared. If you, anyway, it's a free country, but anyway, go prepared, guys. Why go at all? Because that is up to you. Let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section, and we thank you so much for tuning in. As usual, we really appreciate. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and let's be part of the creating change and creating a difference, right? So we'll see you on our next episode.